Okay, Council, YouTube is set.
Thank you. Okay, it being 5 o'clock, colleagues, I'm going to call the regular council meeting to order for March the 9th, 2021. And I'd like to begin with a moment of silent reflection to observe a moment of silence so that council staff and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we are trying to serve. Thank you. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. I'm going to ask colleagues if there is any declaration of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. And clerk, there was none noted. We'll go to the minutes. We have two sets of minutes, colleagues. We have the regular council meeting of February the 23rd, and we also have the special meeting of February 23rd. Moved by Sherry, seconded by Anita. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Carried. Okay, we're going to go to deputations. But just before we get to Mr. Muir's deputation, I just want to take a moment to welcome two new staff members. And so Leisha has just turned on her camera. Thank you. Leisha Newton is our Acting Economic Development Coordinator. She started just a short little while ago, and we all, from a council perspective, want to say welcome to you and thank you for coming to work here. And we look forward to having a very, very good and productive year.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi. Thank you. And the second hire that I wanted to mention tonight, I don't know if Chantel is online, if she can liven up her camera, if she is.
Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, I don't believe Chantel is with us.
Okay, well, I just wanted to recognize that Chantel is our building inspector by law enforcement officer, and she started in the township in the fall, and maybe we can have at the next meeting have an opportunity to meet her. So that will take us on to our deputations. So we have one formal deputation tonight. It's from Mr. Muir regarding cork line cannabis cultivation concerns. Welcome, Mr. Muir. We will proceed much like we did the last time you were here, where there is an opportunity for 10 minutes, and I would ask that you try to stick to that time frame to make your presentation. If you get onwards of 9 minutes, I'll just say something. And then I am going to ask our staff member, Mr. Lamar, to present a related report. And then I'm going to open it up to council members for discussion, and I'll start off with the ward councillor, Donna. So having said that, welcome, Mr. Muir, and the floor is yours.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me fine? Yep, okay, well, I'll just start. And a couple things I'd like to say is, first of all, thanks for having us back again from the January 19th meeting. One of the things I'd like to mention to you is that, due to COVID, we're not able to physically be there in front of you. And a lot of the residents have asked me to mention this, that it seems to be a disadvantage to mainly get our point across and, ensure that you, council, is paying attention to what we are discussing. The other thing is, the situation has caused deep wounds within the community. Many residents near and far from this site have expressed concerns and anger over what has been voted for by passing bylaw 2020-002. We've yet to receive any direct response from Andy Mitchell, the mayor, or council to give us an explanation as to why this bylaw was passed in the manner it was, residents are troubled, shocked, and in some cases outraged by this. I know our main discussion tonight is to be in regards to a request for an interim control bylaw, but the situation goes way deeper than that. I will just read it, what we have sent in there is recognition by all residents and Selwyn Council that the current bylaw 2020-002 does not currently provide adequate buffer distance and setbacks from property lines as requested by Peterborough Public Health in their letter dated December 9th, 2019. It does not take into account the provincial policy statement on mitigation of adverse effects as set out in their policies. And it does not take into account the recommendations in the earlier Meridian Planning Consultants of September 2019, if I'm correct, of a suggestion that 150 to 500 meters is typical. So given that, I just want to say that, the letter from Peterborough Public Health dated December 9th, 2019, and I'll just read from the second paragraph in that Peterborough Public Health supports the recommendation of option A, requiring a site-specific zoning as a means to regulate cannabis cultivation and processing in agricultural, industrial, and zones in the township of Selwyn. However, we would recommend the inclusion of language in the official plan as well as in the zoning bylaw to ensure minimum separation distance of 150 meters between outdoor cannabis cultivation with or without a building present and sensitive land use. We're not sure why that was never taken into full consideration, but subsequently, some people had some good ideas, and one of them is a letter that's submitted and is on the website tonight, and that is a letter from Dave Smith's office. You have that. It's available for everybody to read and take into consideration, but we'll just point out a couple things in there. That they are paying attention. They took interest in this along with Marion Monseff's office to look at and understand what is going on in Selwyn Township and why is there such an uproar there regarding the proposed 290 cork line site for cannabis cultivation. And in there, which is important to understand, is Dave Smith's office and the supporting staff in there did their due diligence, got background information in it, and stated in this letter, Peterborough Public Health, and this is referring to the letter that was submitted to Selwyn Township, but Dave Smith's office took that and looked at it as an important issue. Peterborough Public Health units such as PPH provide invaluable service to regions across Ontario and a host of issues. In short, their provincial mandated purpose is to deliver programs and services to promote and protect the residents of our community. In a letter to Selwyn Council, December 2019, they made it clear their position on the proposed project. Specifically, they supported site-specific zoning as a means to regulate cannabis cultivation and processing in agricultural, rural, and industrial rural zones. Additionally, Peterborough Public Health recommended the inclusion of language in the official plan as well as a bylaw in question of minimum separation distance of 150 meters between outdoor cannabis cultivation and sensitive land use. And this is in their letter to you. It seems to me that not only the concerns of the residents in Ennismore near 290 Cork have not appropriately been taken into account, but also the comments submitted by Peterborough Public Health. They're essentially saying those were not adopted. Now, resolution number 2021-031, which is one put forth by Donna, which we fully support and appreciate. That Donna listened. Donna took our concerns seriously with all the emails and the phone calls that went on between the residents here and Selwyn Council, it is a welcome step in the right direction. Our shared constituents, those who we were elected to represent, rightfully expect us to develop and implement policies in line with their interests. That is our interests. For the betterment of our communities, we all want a strong, sustainable, resilient, and healthy community, and it's incumbent on us to respect the concerns of the electorate. Says it pretty clear. Says it pretty clear. So we did not receive an explanation from council the last time. We did not receive an apology to the public who is shocked, who is outraged, but we did receive at least a step in the right direction that for correctable action that may take place. But we insist that that has to take place on 290 Court. This situation, and this comes from many residents in this area, this situation was created by your decisions in 2019 and 2020. Many residents have stated that we expect Selwyn Council to correct the bylaw, and it must include 290 Court. And I know what Rob Lamar's recommendation tonight is going to basically negate what I've wanted to propose here, and that is that the specific bylaw does not address specific areas where outdoor cultivation facilities in agriculture zones cannot be located near, such as residential property, subdivisions, so forth, because it's considered as of right in agricultural lands. But somehow the requirements from Peterborough Public Health, the provincial policy statements, and the Meridian Planning Consultants report somehow got missed, and we're miffed as to why. And Andy, we would like to have an answer tonight. We would like to have a response from council as to why this was left out. We commend and approve Donna Ballantyne, and for those who worked with her, to recognize what we said on January 19th and all the subsequent emails, all the subsequent phone calls that have gone into your decision to pass the resolution 2021-031. That's important to understand that you did pay attention, at least in that case. It's a great step forward, but it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't go far enough to protect us, to protect the community, and to respect the needs of what is here. We request that 290 Court be included in any future changes to this. And the reason being is that the original site permit on 290 Court was for a so-called rural agricultural buildings set back at 30 meters. Secondly, the 290 Court line does not meet the current bylaw whatsoever in terms of that for section 4A or 4B of the current bylaw. And
Mr. Muir, there's about 30 seconds left.
I have 30 seconds left. So let me just finish it off here, Andy, is that we consider this to be unjust, unreasonable, and not fair to the residents in the community. There's many emails that have been sent in to you, which I don't have time to read, but some of them are very, very, very passionate about what they're saying, that they have put their life, heart, and soul into living here, being part of the community, and preparing their house for long-term living. And they feel totally abandoned right now. So I'm relaying that to you, and we do expect action to be taken. And we hope to hear from you tonight on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muir. I'm now going to ask Mr. Lemaire to comment on the report that he's presented to council in respect of this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the report before council was drafted in light of the community's expressed concern with the proposed cannabis cultivation facility at 290 Court. I've tried to convey what has informed my responses to the community's requests in the body of the report, and I'll do my best to expand on the rationale as I speak to the report this evening. I think it should be acknowledged that the township has responded to the community's concerns by committing to work with the landowner to find ways to mitigate potential impacts such as lighting and irrigation. and reducing the visibility of the operation. And in addition, we have supported the community's position with the licensing agent, Health Canada. So a portion of the proposed recommendation that I've made today is intended to bolster that support. So in addition to those efforts, Council has asked that staff initiate a best practice review to ensure that our regulations as they relate to cannabis cultivation and production account for the most recent research and remain current. And again, the proposed resolution recommends that we expand on the scope of what is to be studied. Well, I think what's important to note is that the current regulations that are in place related to cannabis cultivation and production were developed after having undertaken a comprehensive study of the issue, which included consultation with the public and with relevant commenting agencies. I think it's been pointed out that we didn't get a lot of input from the public, but we did attempt to get the input so that we could consider their potential concerns as we drafted the regulations. So I read numerous comments and additional comments have been made this evening, suggesting that the comments that we received during the consultation phase of the process from Peterborough Public Health, that if adopted would have impacted this proposed development, and that isn't accurate. And I'm going to clarify that because it's a misconception that's been often repeated. So the letter we received from the health unit did ask for language to be included in the official plan and zoning bylaw to ensure a minimum separation distance of 150 meters between outdoor cannabis cultivation and sensitive land uses, right? So you can't stop reading there, because the letter goes on to say, we are making this recommendation to ensure that vulnerable populations, including children and youth who attend rural daycare and schools that are located beside agricultural lands, are not exposed to visual aspects, noise, and odor generated from cannabis cultivation. They further clarified that in an email to us in December of 2020 to identify exactly what they meant by sensitive land use. And what they said was the intent was to ensure that that there was a distance between outdoor cultivation and uses that occupy children and youth for extended periods of time. And they went on to provide examples of that to illustrate their point. And they cited daycares, nurseries, parks, community centers, and arenas. So the request to increase the crop setback from 50 meters to 150 meters from residential zones is not consistent with the recommendations made by Peterborough Public Health. So I thought that that was something that I think needed to be clarified. So in addition, Mr. Chair, my report also speaks to the limitations that municipalities must operate within. These limitations typically take the form of provincial legislation. So as it relates to the request made in the delegation and in earlier correspondence, our response must be informed by legislation contained within the official plan, the Ontario Planning Act and the Ontario Municipal Act. So in response to the request that the township pass an interim control bylaw, I noted in my report that the current regulatory regime was approved following a comprehensive review of the issue, which was conducted during a period when an interim control bylaw was in place. So I've cited in my report that the Planning Act regulates how municipalities can use interim control bylaws. And specifically under section 38.7, the Act regulates that. Where an interim control bylaw ceases to be in effect, the council of the municipality may not for a period of 3 years pass a further interim control bylaw that applies to any lands which were originally originally in the interim control bylaw. So in this context, this property was definitely covered by the interim control bylaw that was passed in 2019 and essentially ended in March of 2020. So the municipalities really prevented, we cannot pass another interim control bylaw until that 3 years is passed. So we're looking at March of 2023. And as noted earlier, we are proposing to complete a best practice review of the cannabis cultivation and production issue. This review may result in changes to our policies and zoning regulations. And these regulations, if adopted, cannot apply retroactively to any lawfully in a use that's currently lawful by the time that we pass the bylaw, right? And I cite the section in the Planning Act that prevents municipalities from passing retroactive laws. I know in my report also spoke to a request that had been made in through earlier correspondence related to the placing of a court injunction on the property. So I note that we believe that the intent of the injunction would be to prevent the cultivation of cannabis crops on the subject property. In my report notes that in this context, of course, that use is permitted, and we'd be asking the court somehow to prevent the use that is currently permitted. And under Section 440 of the Municipal Act, we are permitted to make application to restrain an activity, but only if a bylaw of the municipality is being contravened, right? So in this context, there would be no contravention of the municipal bylaw if they develop the site in a way that's consistent with our bylaw. And so we couldn't, in that context, seek an injunction. So just by way of closing, Mr. Chair, I think that we have considered the requests made by the community and have put forward a recommendation that recognizes and supports the community's concerns in a manner that is consistent with the legislation that must inform our decisions. So with that, I'll end it.
Thank you very much, Rob. I'm going to now turn it over to Donna for some council comments, and then I'm going to rotate through councils.
Thank you, Andy, through you. And also thank you to Mr. Muir. I think he's still here. A couple of comments on your comments. We certainly are paying attention to what you're saying. And if you want proof of that, ask my husband, because he said this morning, I have heard nothing about this since before Christmas. So, and I've talked to all of staff and all other council members, and I think they probably are tired of hearing me when I'm on the phone. So we certainly are paying attention. And another comment about not being in the office for this meeting, even if we were in the office, there would only be allowed to be 6 spectators in the audience. So that really wouldn't help with our interactions. The second thing I wanted to say is that council has received a summary of all residents' concerns, and there's actually 20 pages of them. So they have certainly been informed. And I also want, you can pass it on to residents as well as I will, that if people want to be informed when the outdoor cannabis, when and if the outdoor cannabis application has been applied for, make sure Angela Chittick has your email, and she will send you an email indicating that the application has been applied for. And there's also a reporting form that she could send to you as well in order to keep all reports in a consistent manner. And I also have, I don't know, Mr. Mayor, do we want to receive Rob's report before I go on? Because I have a motion that I'd like to add to Rob's. So should we not vote on Rob's first?
To receive, and Sherry's moving that we receive Rob's report. Will you second that, Anita? Okay, all those in favor of receiving Rob's report? That's carried.
To receive it, Mr. Mayor, it's to move the recommendations, because the recommendations that Rob has in that report tightens up the earlier resolution that we passed because it includes both indoor and outdoor.
I think Donna wants to speak to them.
And I have quite some that are similarly related to Rob's report, but I have a motion that I would like to put forward that has a considerable number of points to help us move forward in this predicament. And I think we have a seconder, and I'd like that seconder to indicate so before I start.
Jerry, take the chair for a second, please.
Yes, so we have a motion coming forward from Councillor Valentine and seconded by Mayor Mitchell. Councillor
second.
Valentine?
Okay, thank you. And
Go
I,
ahead now, Donna.
pardon me?
Go ahead.
Not in the chair.
I just need you to take the chair while I second it. I'll take it back now.
You can take it back now? Okay.
Okay, and I have asked staff to put my motion on the board for people who are watching on Zoom so that they can listen and read, so that, because there's a lot of information here. So whereas the federal government has assigned cannabis regulating licensing to Health Canada, and whereas some operations need zoning bylaw amendments and other site plan alterations before operations begin, and whereas municipalities are not informed of applications for licenses for indoor medical cannabis operations, which results in the license holder not being required to conform to applicable zoning and building code requirements. And whereas the township expects all property owners to abide by the official plan, zoning bylaws, site plan requirements, building code, and other regulatory matters, including medical cannabis operations. And whereas Selwyn Township supports the municipality of Tweed's request that licenses for medical cannabis production should be subject to consultation with municipalities and have regard for specific land use zoning bylaws. And whereas Selwyn Township intends for its official plan and zoning bylaws to be consistent with provincial policy statement and ensure land uses be planned and developed to avoid or minimize potential adverse health risks from odor, noise, or other contaminants in the water or on the land. And whereas the federal government announced on March 8, 2021, that public consultation was launched in an effort to tighten the rules for individuals who are allowed to grow medical cannabis, and therefore be it resolved that the federal government and Health Canada be asked to review the effects of cannabis production and processing, both indoors and outdoors, on local residents, and implement additional measures to protect the health of local residents, including informing municipalities of all types of licensing so that community concerns can be considered. And further, that in view of changing circumstances, Selwyn Township moved expeditiously in conducting a review of best practices in respect of outdoor cannabis cultivation, and the scope of the practices reviewed be broadened to include regulations related to indoor cultivation production activities, as well as the outdoor cultivation. And further, that Health Canada be requested to ensure that all license types, including indoor medical cannabis applications, be consistent with municipal zoning and building requirements, and that until such time as this change is made, that no other license types, including outdoor cultivation licenses, be considered by Health Canada, including the property at 290 Cork Line. Further, that Selwyn Township advise Health Canada that the sheds recently erected at 290 Cork Line as part of its proposed outdoor cannabis cultivation operation do not conform to township bylaws for such operations. And further, that the owners of 290 Cork Line be requested to maintain a separation of 150 meters between any outdoor cannabis cultivation and any residential property. and further that a copy of this resolution be sent to Prime Minister Trudeau, the Minister of Health, Patricia Hadjdu, the Honorable MP Miriam Monsef, Health Canada, and the owners of 290 Cork Line.
Thank you, Donna. I will go to comments from the other three councillors. I'll start with Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to congratulate Donna on a very comprehensive and thorough motion, and I definitely support it. I think when we went into this, originally when we were asking for community input and we had very little response from the community at the time, I think because as I said back then, you know, when I thought cannabis cultivation, production or whatever, I was envisioning, you know, like 100-acre farm for the production of cannabis, and didn't even tweak that it might be so close to a residential area. So I think your motion is definitely a step in the right direction, and hopefully we can get some traction from it.
Thank you, Anita. Jerry? Jerry?
Sorry, my space bar wouldn't work for me
Oh,
for some
sorry.
reason.
I thought you were shaking your head no. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm always shaking my head there. I got to do that to pay attention. It would have been nice. I appreciate Donna's motion today for sure. And I guess this goes to show what happens when, you know, after the fact, if people got involved and paid attention to the to some of the surveys and information sessions we've got, you know, we wouldn't be in this situation. So I think it's a great motion.
Thank you, Jerry. Sherry?
I support the motion.
Okay. Thank you very much, Donna. We have a motion. It's duly second. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, colleagues. And we've got a fair amount of work that's outlined in that motion, and we will proceed accordingly. Thank you. We'll now move on to our next part of our agenda, which is our public meetings. Colleagues, we have a number of them. We have actually 4 public meetings. So we'll try to deal with this as expeditiously as we possibly can. And so I'm going to turn the meeting over to Jeanette to read the necessary information that you have to read into the record to begin our public meeting. So Jeanette?
Thank you. So to begin with, we are having 4 public meetings. One is for official plan and a zoning bylaw amendment, and then the other 3 are for zoning bylaw amendments. So I'd just like to note that the County of Peterborough and the Township of Selwyn are holding this joint public meeting in order to consider applications to amend the local component of the County of Peterborough official plan and the zoning bylaw for the Township of Selwyn in accordance with Section 17 and 34 of the Planning Act. The prescribed notice of public meeting is provided by prepaid first-class mail to all residents within a 120-meter radius of the subject properties, as well as by way of the sign being posted on the property. The notice was provided via email and fax to the prescribed ministries and agencies, and the hearing was also advertised in the Peterborough this week. The notice is also available on the county and township's websites. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make a written submission to the County of Peterborough and the Township of Selwyn before the official plan amendment is adopted or the bylaw amendments are passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the council of the county and the township to the local planning appeal tribunal, nor can a person or public body be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the LPAT unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to do so. So we do have the county planner who is in attendance, so Caitlin Robinson, as well as county council representation, which I believe is Roger Bordeaux. So would you like me just to move forward with the first public meeting, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, we'll go to the first one, which is 1824, the 8th line, Polish Perfection. So go ahead, Janet.
Yes, thank you. So the township did receive a complete application for a zoning bylaw amendment. This is just a zoning bylaw amendment application. The Property owners presently operate a home-based business, Polish Perfection, from the subject property. This business includes detailing of automobiles, trucks, boats, and motorcycles. The business has expanded over the years and has it started off sort of as a home industry or home occupation, but has expanded sort of beyond the scope of that. And the property owner is now looking to construct a structure and to allow for the operation to take place within the back portion of this property. The lands, are presently zoned rural. They're designated rural, and they have a rural residential exception zoning on them. The rural designation does allow for limited small-scale commercial uses. EcoView Planning Consultants has asserted that the proposed use is considered to be small-scale, and the planners at the county and the planners of the township have agreed with this interpretation. So therefore, the proposal is consistent with the official plan. The property, as I noted, is zoned rural residential exception 413. That exception zone specifically allows for a minimum lot frontage of 30 meters. Otherwise, all provisions of the RR zone does apply. I have noted previously that the scope of what would be a home industry, this proposal is beyond that scope. Therefore, the official plan amendment, the zoning bylaw amendment is required in order for him to continue with running the business from the property. We have proposed that a holding provision be placed on the subject lands if the bylaw is passed, and this would ensure that the property owner does enter into a site plan agreement with the municipality. And that site plan agreement would ensure that the property is developed appropriately and takes into consideration the recommendations of the several studies that were submitted in support of the application. And this would include a planning justification report, traffic impact analysis, a stormwater management brief, as well as a water quantity assessment, a sewage system assessment, and also some information related to the disposal of gray water. The studies have all been peer reviewed by qualified professionals, and the conclusions and the recommendations have been found to be acceptable, with the exception of the management of gray water being generated from the automobile and boat detailing operation. We are still working through the final details of the management of the gray water with the client or our peer review engineers and the applicant's engineers. So I have noted that the holding provision would be applied to the property. I've also completed a review of the application to determine that its conformity with provincial policy statements, growth plan, as well as the township and county official plan. And that's been provided in the analysis. And at this point, I have recommended that given the fact that we still have some unanswered questions as it relates to the gray water, management of the gray water associated with the operation, that you do receive this report for information, that staff continue to work with the applicant to establish a viable solution for the disposal of gray water generated from the automobile and boat detailing operation, and that staff consider input received resulting from this public meeting and bring back a recommendation for council's consideration at a future meeting. I will note that we have received additional comments from a neighboring property owner, which you have received, which identifies some concerns as it relates to water usage. If the cistern will be big enough to hold water, that's one of the solutions for ensuring that the wells aren't depleted. Concerned about the gray water and concerned about where the parking of vehicles would be. We've also received several letters and a petition of support of the application, which has also been posted on the website, and I believe was given to council. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I know that the applicant's planner is on the line, as well as I believe the applicants.
Okay. Does Caitlin want to add anything to that first?
This was just a zoning bylaw amendment.
Oh, yeah, sorry, excuse me. Yes, thank you. Gotta get there. Okay, so we'll go first to those who are in support of this application, and is it Pat and Carrie are the owners, and Kent Randall is the agent. Does somebody want to make a comment in favor? Yes.
Hello,
Okay.
Mayor Mitchell. Yes, this is Kent. Yeah, how's everybody doing? Yeah, Kent Randall from EcoView Consulting. We're obviously the planners for Pat and Carrie. And Pat, as Jeanette said, is with me as well. So I just wanted to say a few things and try to get ahead at least of some of the comments that have come in, primarily from the neighbor, and just to sort of set the record straight in terms of what the scale of this operation is going to be. So just to reiterate, as Jeanette mentioned, it's basically like a home industry on a slightly larger scale. And that's the reason for the zoning bylaw amendment. It doesn't fit within the parameters of what typically a home industry would be, but it is generally going to be sort of an accessory use to the primary residential use. And what has prompted this is that Pat would like to construct a new building at the rear of the property, out of sight from the road, out of sight from neighbors, so that he can operate his business, out of sight, out of mind, essentially. And like I said, not a large scale operation. It's simply the detailing, washing of vehicles and boats. There's some dent pulling that might happen and minor body work as well. And that's done by outside subconsultants or subcontractors, I should say. So Pat is the owner, and he's the only full-time employee. Sometimes he'll bring in contractors, like I said, to deal with the dent pulling, the minor work. And then he also has seasonal subcontractors that he uses during his busy periods during the summer. The washing that goes on during the operation doesn't involve any water softener. It doesn't, the water doesn't need to be softened. There's no chemicals used during the washing process. Sometimes he uses some biodegradable cleaning substances for some spot cleaning, but only once in a while. So this is generally when we're talking about quote unquote, I'll say quote unquote gray water, we're really just talking about water, just water running off from these vehicles and the boats. So, and I'll get to the issue of gray water in just a second, because obviously that's something that's kind of holding up this ultimately moving forward. And so it is a seasonal operation, generally from April to November. And so I'm just, with these details, I'm just trying to lay out exactly what this operation is and how it fits within that home industry realm. And so, like I said, it's going to occur at the back of the property, and that's the intention. And that's where the vehicles will be parked that he's going to be working on. They will be in the back. So in terms of of impacts, like Jeanette said, we've done a traffic impact brief. We've done stormwater management brief. We also did a water impact assessment, and that was obviously in response to some concerns that staff and the neighbor had. And the results of that assessment is that there's no impacts to the aquifer whatsoever. So there's no impacts or interference to nearby wells. Just to give you an understanding of how much water he uses, typically on average per day, he would be using about 215 liters. And a typical household uses about 1,000 to 2,000 liters of water. So, and this was done through a meter. It was monitored during his busy time in the summer. And so he can easily take the water from the well if he needs to. However, he's not going to use the well. That would simply be backup. He's going to be using a cistern. And the cistern, as noted in the assessment, which is going to be about 5,000 to 1,000 gallons. Sorry, I'm switching to imperial there, but 500 to 1,000 gallons. And that's going to take rainwater, and it's going to be used for his pressure washing. And as noted in the assessment, because of the usage of the water that he has on a daily basis, he can sustain that with a cistern. So, and regardless, if let's say there's an unprecedented drought, he still has water that he can rely on from the well. So, and then from a traffic standpoint, he's only generating about 3 trips a day because people are not coming there to park it. They're dropping their vehicles off, and he's only able, because of the capacity, to work on so many vehicles per day. So just quickly back to the gray water. So Jeanette had noted that's kind of the final comments that have yet to be resolved from the peer reviewer. We believe that there's might be misunderstanding from the peer reviewer standpoint, and And our engineer is confident that there's no impacts from a quote unquote gray water perspective. And given the amount of water that's being used and the type of runoff that's occurring from this washing. So we really believe that those concerns aren't necessarily there's no basis in those concerns, we believe. And we also believe that that's something that could be dealt with further at the site plan approval stage. And so from that perspective, we would prefer and it's obviously based on your questions and comments and the public's comments as well, if we were able to address them, that we would prefer that this bylaw move forward tonight, be recommended for approval tonight. However, it's we understand if there is some hesitance on council's part not to move forward based on those outstanding comments. However, I will say that they are strictly related to that quote unquote gray water issue. So that's generally all I need to say from that perspective. And of course, I'm happy to answer any comments that council or the public may have. And like I said, Pat is here with me as well, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Kent. Pat, did you want to add anything to that?
I think he's kind of summed everything up. Pretty much,
Okay, well, stay on the line in case there's any questions. Before I get to council, I just have to go through a couple of things first here.
Thank you.
I think, Madam Clerk, that we have two individuals who wanted to ask questions who have registered. And the first one I'll recognize is Evelyn Wilson. Is Evelyn on the line?
Evelyn is on the line. Maybe you're just muted, Evelyn.
Sorry, it's just Tanya here. She is unmuted.
Is it on now?
Are we there?
We can hear you.
There you go. My name's Kelly. I'm Evelyn's son. She just asked me to come in and say a couple things. Just to let you know, I know Pat and Carrie, and I understand small business, and I'm all for small business. Just a couple of things that I see when I look at some of the reports here. The EcoView volume report, talking about a business like this only using 250 liters a day. You know what, I look at that and I'm thinking, well, if the average power washer uses 2.5 gallons a minute or 11 and a quarter liters a minute, you're going to tell me that you're only going to run it for 20 minutes a day? I think that there's going to be more usage than that. Also, when it comes to the business doesn't use any chemicals, I had a cleaning business, a boat cleaning business, and when you start looking at some of the things that you're using, there's definitely going to be chemicals used there. So it's how is that gray water going to be looked after? There again, I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen, but is there ways that we can safeguard against any problems down the road? There again, the reason for this whole issue is a lot of the houses in that area, lived there all of our lives, a lot of the houses in that area have always had water issues, water volume issues. Any of the initial reports that I saw talked about water quality issues, not quantity issues, but quality issues. And I had talked to Pat briefly about that as well. And that's when he had told me that, they were going to be using less than the average household does. I still have a bit of a tough challenge kind of agreeing with that. But, and then also, when I'm reading through the report, I see that there's a couple of contractors that will be doing body work. So does that mean
I think we've lost you, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, he's dropped off the meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I think we got the gist of what he was asking about. I'm going to go to Mr. Gooley first, and then I'll ask Kent if he wants to answer both individuals. So is Jim on the line?
Mr. Gooley's not with us, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so it was just Mr. Wilson's comments. And Ken, if you could speak to, I think he talked about that he only had seen quality, not quantity, in terms of the water reports. And I think he talked about, expressed some skepticism about about how much water is actually used in a power washer. That's not my expertise, so I'll let somebody comment on that. And I think the third thing that he was going to raise before he got cut off was the extent to which he could expect body work to be done on the site. So Kent, maybe you could just answer all three of those.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So in terms of the body work, it's just very small touch-ups and scratches. We're not talking about replacing bumpers and things like that. Maybe that I probably used the wrong term there, but when I say small body work occurring, that's what I mean. And in terms of the quantity of water, Pat had like I said, this was monitored, and we didn't do the report. The GHD and an engineer, a hydrogeologist, did the report, and they certainly agreed with in terms of the quantity of water that's being used and will be used. And Pat's telling me right now that there's the average car takes about 7 minutes to wash. So that right there gives you a sense as to, like I was saying, the amount of vehicles that he would detail per day. It's not always washing, right? That's only one aspect of it, right? So it's not a car wash. That's part of it. Certainly, he does wash the cars, but again, he's not using those large quantities that a car wash or washing business would use. In terms of the quantity, or the quality of water, again, we did have our engineer, an engineer from Tatham that we were using for the stormwater management report. We did have him review the water quality the water quantity assessment, determine from a quality perspective how it would what the activities that Pat was undertaking in terms of the washing and what he would use on the boats or on the vehicles, and he agreed that that it wouldn't have there are no issues related to water quality, and perhaps maybe we can have Pat elaborate, but he's using, just to give you an idea as to what he's using biodegradable if he is using a cleaner, a biodegradable cleaner on just on touch-ups and small cleaning spots, or cleaning small spots on the vehicles. And Pat, maybe do you want to just elaborate on the types of substances you use?
Yep. We use for any removal of anything that's tough to come off, it's all called Simply Green. I think you can actually drink the stuff. And for the boats, we use stuff that's called Slimy Grimy. It actually is used on boat hulls when you go from one lake to another, to keep from taking contaminants from one lake to another. So it's actually safe for all fauna and flora, made with no detergents. So the stuff that I use, I have a well here too, and I'm worried about, I want to take care of my own property as well. So it's not like I'm trying to, put anything by anybody. I'm trying to look after my own property as well. I have to live here too. I have to drink my water. I have to bathe in my water. I don't want to do anything to harm my own property. So, it just seems like I'm being like, I'm looking after myself as well as everybody else. I'm not out to try to, pull anything over anybody. So everything that I use I try to use the safest stuff that I can.
Thanks, Pat. If I could just clarify something, and then I'm going to turn it over to council, because that was our last the last point. In terms of the comments that was made, Jeanette, not only were the reports were done by a consultant, but they were peer reviewed. So in terms of the water quality and the quantity, that would have been peer reviewed by our consultant. And if I understand correctly, they were satisfied with that when it came to water quality or water quantity. Can you just clarify that?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure of that. Okay, let's go to council. Sorry,
Mr. Mayor, if I could just interrupt, we do have Kelly Wilson back on the line. If he could just finish his points.
Okay, Kelly. I don't know whether you heard it. We discussed the ones that you had made, but make the additional one. Sorry that you got cut off there.
I do apologize for that. They can land a man on the moon and they can't make cell phones and internet work all the time. But so we did freeze up and fall off there. So yeah, and one of the other issues that we had, I apologize, I couldn't hear any of the conversation, of course, was you know, and it does say in one of the reports that all the business is going to be carrying on out back where the shop is, which I understand is a great place. It'll move the business away. It'll be better for the neighbors, that type of thing. But for sure, there is not going to be any business conducted out front anymore. All the business is going to be in the back. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think Kent, that is the plan, right?
Yes, through the mayor, that is correct.
Okay, so when the idea, I think just before I got, I froze up there before, you know, I was talking about a couple of the contractors that are on board do body work. So does this mean that down the road, the business will turn into a body shop and they'll have vehicles for sale, that type of thing? And it's not so much what's Pat and Carrie doing, but later on when they move on, what happens to that property? The next person could take it over and say, oh boy, I can run whatever type of business out of here. No.
I'll ask Jeanette to deal with that, but I believe that the use of the property is going to be governed by the bylaw that's being proposed, and that you can't just simply buy the property and then go off and do some other activity that isn't included in the bylaw. Jeanette, is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is absolutely correct. The bylaw is specific to this business, and it will, and it defines the business. So any sort of expansion into something else they would need to come back to amend the bylaw again.
Perfect. I was hoping that would be the answer and kind of figured that would be, but I just needed to make that point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Okay, I think we've gone through all the comments from the audience. So Donna's got her hand up. I think she wants to go first.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want Mr. Wilson actually missed the conversation that the body work would be very basic scratches and dents, not like repairs from an accident or anything, or replacing fenders and bumpers and side panels. So that was explained while we lost connection from you. It's going to be very basic body work. And then my other question would be,
I appreciate that.
Oh, so that wasn't really a question, but it was a comment. My question to Jeanette would be, what would be some possible gray water solutions that you have in mind, or gray water, what in order to control gray water if we deemed that was necessary?
So thank you. So through you, Mr. Mayor. So the applicant first off has identified that he's not using any harsh chemicals. There may be a small amount of wax residue on the vehicles that may create a little bit of, I guess, quote unquote, contaminants. So some mitigation measures is there is some exploration about using the stormwater management facility. So we're just trying to determine whether or not that is appropriate. And that would sort of filter out any sort of contaminants or sediments or anything like that would be in the runoff. as well as there is a possibility of using what they call gravel pads underneath the vehicles while the washing is occurring. And again, that will just sort of filter out some of the sediments and contaminants that may or may not be in the water. So at this point, those solutions have been provided to Stantec, who's peer reviewing it on our behalf. And if they are able to find the solution acceptable, my recommendation would be that all those solutions will be part of the site plan agreement.
Further comment, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
I could be wrong, but I thought I read in the report that they were going to do their work on gravel pads. I thought that was already established. Maybe it was just commented on, but I thought that was established.
That is part of the solution. We're just making sure that it works.
Okay.
Okay. I see Mr. Councillor Heron. Jerry.
Spacebar. Thank you. My space bar is not working. I'm glitching a little bit, so if I get goofy here, I'll be back here. So I guess a couple questions there, and I guess to Jeanette, what's the difference in a fleet washing their trucks at a yard? I could, let's say Robert Young Construction or Burley Bus Lines cleaning some stuff up, or the township cleaning their stuff up outside. What's the difference there?
I wouldn't say there'd be a whole lot. I could, like, somebody that would be running a business would probably have some sort of a solution for the runoff, like a oil grit separator or something like that. I know that Robert Young would have something like that. I'm not sure some of the other examples that he's given, if they do.
Okay. So when a mobile power wash company comes by on a weekend and washes an entire fleet that's sitting outside, I still can't get my head around what the difference is between that happening on a dirt yard versus what Pat's doing. I'm having trouble there. Myself, I know, being in the power wash game, I know when I go and do a typical house, I put over 100 liters of water and soap. And yes, I have used Slimy Grimy Pat, great product, against the house, and it just runs into the ground. So I guess my concern is Pat's not doing anything that a normal homeowner, for that matter, or a normal business would do outside. I know the township at the township garage, we've got an oil water separator inside the building, but we don't have one outside. I know Young's would have one inside, but they don't have one out, and that's where the bulk of the washing would be done, on the outside. So again, I don't understand what the issue is with this. And Stantec, in their own words, with the peer review, has said, and I half-assed quote here, if the applicant intends to discharge the boats, vehicles, water into the stormwater system, this system is intended to receive stormwater only, and this arrangement is, and here's the key word, generally not accepted. Generally, not shall, will, or must. So at this point, it's acceptable, as I read it, or generally not acceptable, which means it is acceptable. So at this point, Pat, I think Pat's done enough. I think Pat's in a position here where I think we should be able to move forward with the gray water. As far as that 215 liters that Pat uses today, just for council's reference, if you take one of those 4840, like a skid, and then you see those the white plastic containers with the metal around that guys haul water in, or they use them for rain barrels, 215 liters is a quarter, just shy of a quarter of one of those. They hold 1,000 liters. So it's a very small amount. Pressure washer, and again, rough idea what it's about. I've been doing it for 14 years. Looks like a mass amount of water, but it's really very little because of the pinhole that it comes out and then it fans. It's very little water. So with that said, I'd like to make a motion tonight that the polished perfection draft zoning bylaw amendment be brought to the bylaws section of the next meeting as is, barring a significant concern that is brought to our attention at that meeting in 2 weeks. But in light of Kent's comments that he'd like to see it even go forward tonight, I'd be willing to put that on the table as well, that we move ahead tonight instead of waiting the 2 weeks. So basically looking for a seconder to either put it on the table for 2 weeks or in the bylaws section for 2 weeks so Pat can move ahead, or even tonight.
Can I just ask the question just before we go ahead? If we move it to put it to the bylaw, or to put it to the bylaws tonight and pass it, can we just not use the process for a site plan approval to deal with if there are any other issues in respect of the gray water? Is there any reason why we would hesitate?
Yeah, we can use, yes, thank you. We can use the site plan approval process to deal with those fine details. The idea is we like to know that in general, that the solutions are like, so, you know, your traffic impact study in general is accepted, and then fine details are completed afterwards. So definitely would be part of the site plan approval process, yes.
Okay, so given that, Jerry, maybe you want to move that it comes to tonight's bylaw section.
Absolutely, sir.
Is there a seconder for that? Donna is willing to second that. Okay.
I want to make a comment. I would like to give a little bit more opportunity to investigate the gray water. So my preference would be to give them 2 weeks. I don't know what I would second 2 weeks, but I don't know how other councillors feel.
Okay, does anybody else? So we've got one idea to go. Anita, do you want to say something? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree with Donna. I think that we need to have a little bit more information with regards to the gray water. I did want to thank both sides of this, Mr. Kent for making the presentation, as well as Mr. Wilson. A lot of my questions, I think, were answered, specifically with regards to pollutants in the water table, and the peer reviews of the studies. Obviously, with the exception of the gray water issue, I think the studies did answer a lot of the questions. I am concerned about the water table and the aquifer, because even if these are I don't know, biodegradable or safe chemicals, I do have some hesitation about that. And also, I think Kent was talking about the use of a cistern. I think we've had summers where we've had very little rain. So to rely on a cistern to produce or provide a lot of the water, I do have a concern about that as well. But I just did want to say presentations from Mr. Wilson on the one side and Mr. Randall on the other side. I do appreciate all the comments.
Oh, okay. Donna, did you want to add something?
I just wanted to comment on the cistern. To my knowledge, a cistern can be refilled as often as necessary. There are a lot of cisterns in Ennismore, and people depend on them for their daily water. So the water truck comes on a regular basis to fill up a cistern. So I don't think that would be an issue.
Jerry.
Thank you to you. I wouldn't have a problem with moving this forward tonight. The only problem is the recommendation that was made that the public has received was that this was not going to be dealt with tonight, and I don't want it to pose a problem. So I think that the original recommendation that Councillor Heron had to bring it back in 2 weeks with the zoning bylaw amendment is the way to go.
Thank you. If we're going to go that route, I just want to make sure that it's going to get dealt with in 2 weeks from now. That's it's got to be that. I don't want it to come back and somebody say we couldn't get it done, etc. It's going to be 4 weeks or 6 weeks. If we're going to put it forward for 2 weeks, and I could support that, I want to make sure that we're going to deal with it in 2 weeks. anyways, back to you, Jerry. Are you willing to make the 2-week motion? Okay, so Councillor Heron is that we received the report and that the bylaw be placed on the agenda 2 weeks from today, whichever date that is. Donna. I need it. Are you seconding that, Donna? Donna seconded that. Okay, any additional comments? Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, everybody who participated in that. Pat and Kent, thank you very much. And Mr. Wilson, if he's still on the line, thank you very much as well.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next one. This one is on the, just trying to get the address here, 1575 Shamong Road. If you want to go ahead with that, Jeanette.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the township has received a complete application again for this is a zoning bylaw amendment for lands that are municipally known as 1575 Shamong Road. It's the former Rona site. So the application is looking. There's 2 phases in the application. So phase 1 is going to have the existing principal building, which is the former Rona building. It will be retrofitted and used as an athletic training facility. And it will include indoor turf fields, playing courts, and fitness training centers. The main floor will remain not necessarily vacant. That was the wrong terminology. It won't be used as part of the business, but it will be providing a space for the staff members to have rests and that sort of thing. The second phase of the development is to allow for construction of a field house that would accommodate multiple sports, as well as a reception building, a replacement of the Quonset huts with some constructed buildings that would accommodate indoor turf and additional training space, and then all the additional parking that would be required. So the property is presently designated rural and highway commercial and environmental constraint. The area of development is entirely within the highway commercial designation, and we, county and township planning staff, agree that it does maintain the intent of the highway commercial designation. The property is zoned highway commercial exception 423. Rural and environmental protection. Again, the area subject to the application is entirely zoned the highway commercial exception 423. The exception zone, it only includes a permitted use of the building supply and sales and buildings accessory to that use. Therefore, for them to move forward with this development, they are required to amend the zoning bylaw. So a number of reports were submitted in support of phase 1. So planning justification report, a preliminary concept plan, environmental constraints map, a traffic study report, and a scoped hydrogeological assessment. So all those reports were peer reviewed by our agencies, as well as provided to the city of Peterborough for their review, because they are within a kilometer of the proposed area. And all the recommendations of the report were accepted or found to be accepted. The holding provision that will be placed on the property will identify that a number of reports need to be updated in order for phase 2 phase 2 for it to actually continue, or to be commenced. So what will happen is that the applicants will update those reports and do the additional new ones, and then they will apply for a site plan agreement. And then once that site plan agreement has been process has been completed, we would remove the holding provision. They'd be able to move forward with the construction of phase 2. I did complete a review, determine conformity with the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, the county official plan, and the township zoning bylaw. And I do believe that the proposal is consistent with provincial policy statement and the growth plan, that it maintains the spirit and intent of the county and township official plan and the township zoning bylaw, and it does represent good planning. We did receive a number of responses to the circulation that we completed, and all of those have been reviewed and outlined within this application or within the report. So finally, I have recommended that the report and be received for information, as well as the bylaw 2021-016, which is a textual amendment to the highway commercial exception 423 zone, which would permit the additional uses of the subject property, which would allow the athletic center be brought forward to the bylaw section of the agenda for your consideration. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I do believe the applicant, as well as their agent, is on the line to provide some comments.
Thank you, Jeanette. And just to make that point, I think the agent is Amanda. I don't know. We also have the owner and the architect. Amanda, are you going to speak? Do you want to intervene?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't actually have much further to add. Jeanette has fully explained the phases of development that we're requesting for approval and the intent of the application. Approval of the application would, of course, benefit the property owner, but also Hybrid, which is an existing local business that provides athletic training services. They've expanded before in the past, and they've seen the demand and the need to expand again. And so this proposed use will permit that expansion. But this would also have a greater impact or a greater benefit to the community. There are many semi-professional, professional, or serious athletes in the area, but currently there is no proper training spaces in the area. If they want to have regulation-sized areas, they need to go outside of the community. And so certainly this application would have that benefit to the local community. So on behalf of the property owner, Gregory Couch, who is, as Jeanette said, on the line tonight, thank you to council for considering this application. And we, of course, agree with the staff recommendation and respectfully request that council approve that. But I am available for any questions, or if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Greg, did you want to add anything?
Yes, I think the only thing I would just point out is that the range of users is not just, the serious athletes, but also the recreational athletes who are finding it more and more difficult to find places to, to participate in whatever sport it is. So I just wanted to make that clear that it's, we anticipate from very young children all the way up to the older ones of us who still want to pretend we can play a sport.
Thanks, Greg. I think Chad is on the line as well. Chad, did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Chair, and staff and council. No, I don't really have anything to add. I think they've done a great job of presenting their option at the moment.
Thank you very much. And I think we have one other person on the line, Holly Gilliam. Holly, did you want to add something?
Holly's here. She's the operator of Hybrid, and she's declined to add anything.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now turn it over to council. Sherry.
Thank you. Through you. I believe this is really an exciting multiple use of this property. And I want to thank Greg for landing in Selwyn Township. And I would be pleased to move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We have a mover, and I think Anita wants to second that. Okay, and Donna wants to comment.
Yes, thank you very much. Through you. There was just one letter from, am I unmuted?
You're good. You're good.
A letter from a neighboring business owner requesting the 6-foot chain link fence. Has that been included?
Jeanette?
That would be part of the site plan agreement process, Donna, and we would, so that would be something that would be commented on at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? We have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much.
I don't know where this property is.
Pardon? Excuse me, did I hear somebody on the line? No, okay. Madam Clerk, is there somebody else on the line for this one?
No, I don't believe so. Somebody may have been commenting regarding another application.
Okay, thank you. We'll then move on to the to our third one. This is both an OP and a zoning bylaw amendment, and this is for 724 Center Line. So Jeanette, if you want to begin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, as you mentioned, this property is at 724 Center Line, and we have received official plan amendment as well as zoning bylaw amendment for these lands. This is the former Fairview United Church. The property is presently designated prime agricultural and is deemed community facility. So amendments are required in order to facilitate the development of the lot, which would convert the former church into a rental music hall. The rectory office would be turned into administrative office for the property owner's existing landscaping business. And then there's also another building on the property, which was the former education center. It will be turned into an accessory residential unit that would be used by the property owners. So the development or the proposal includes the music hall, which would be rented out 2 to 3 times a month, usually on Friday evenings from about 7 to 9. It will accommodate approximately 50 people. The administrative office will be operated by the owners of the property who run a landscaping business. They don't intend to store any materials or equipment on site with the exception of a trailer and a pickup truck that's used for the business. There will be a large garden and an orchard on the property, but that will be for personal use only. So the OPA intends to add a site-specific policy to the subject property that will allow for these uses to occur. And the zoning bylaw amendment would create an exception to the community facility zone specific to the property that would allow these uses to occur on the property. So again, in support of the applications, we have a planning justification report, a traffic impact study, site services option report. The survey was completed as well as a proposed drainage plan was completed. And all of these studies were peer reviewed by professionals, so agencies as well as our peer review engineers. And they had noted that all the recommendations of the study were acceptable. So we have completed a review of the application under the provincial policy statement and the growth plan, as well as the official plan. And I do believe the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan. It does maintain the spirit and intent of the county and township's official plan and the zoning bylaw, and does represent good planning. We did receive a number of responses from our circulation, which have all been identified and summarized in the body of this report. If you have any other questions, I would be happy to answer them. And again, we do have Caitlin on the line for this one. So Caitlin may want to provide some comments prior to it going to the public.
Caitlin, did you want to add something?
Hi, yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Nice to see you all. Yeah, I'll just quickly provide some comments just on the official plan amendment and the process after tonight's public meeting. Because the County of Peterborough is the approval authority for amendments to the county official plan. So the official plan amendment part will ultimately go before County Council for a decision. Jeanette gave a great overview of the planning rationale and policies that are applicable. In this case, I'll just highlight that there are stringent criteria that were needed to be evaluated when non-agricultural uses are proposed in the prime agricultural area, such as the assessment of need, evaluation of alternative locations, and mitigation of impact on agricultural operations in the area. So staff, that was our job to review the application to ensure it met those criteria in provincial policy, as well as the county official plan and the township official plan. And it was our opinion that it was adequately demonstrated that the proposed uses are appropriate on the subject lands. So following receipt of Township Council's position on the official plan amendment application, it will be taken to County Council for a decision. So I'll prepare a report for County Council and make a recommendation for council to make a decision. And then I just want to reiterate that if anyone is tuning in today and wishes to be informed when the official plan amendment will go to county council and would like to receive notice of decision, then I'd ask that they make a written request to the county directly. So if anyone has any questions on the official plan amendment, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Caitlin. And I believe that we have the agent. It's Amanda again. Amanda, do you want to add anything to what was said?
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Mayor, through you. Although again, I don't have a whole lot to add. Both Caitlin and Jeanette have done a great job of summarizing the applications and their intent, so I thank them for that. Approval of these applications is going to allow the property owner the space that they need to run the administrative components of their landscaping business, and where that balance can be balanced with being able to live on the property and to enhance multiple uses there, and also to fully utilize the existing developed form in combination with the music hall. But perhaps maybe more importantly, the music hall will continue to honor the former church that persisted for 148 years and continues or will continue to be enjoyed by the community. So on behalf of the property owners, John and Karen Curtis, who I think are also on the line tonight, again, thank you to the members of council for considering these applications. And again, not surprisingly, we agree with the recommendations of staff and hope to see these approved by council tonight. But again, I am available for questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You noted John and Karen are on the line. Did you want to add something?
Just making sure. Can you hear us?
Sure can.
Yeah, we're here. Everybody's summarized everything well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I don't think there's anybody else in the audience, so I'll go to council. Donna.
Yes, thank you. Through you. Just wondering what they mean by a music hall and approximately 50 people. Like, is it a dance or is it choir practice? I'm not just sure what they mean by a music hall.
Jeanette, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so it'll be a place where musicians are able to come and meet and practice and play. So it'll be musicians that are there. Recording, mayhap recording studio type of idea that may occur too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anita?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that I think it's an awesome idea. To find good practice space or to play music and stuff like that, I think is really important because some of the venues can be quite expensive. But and I know that the acoustics in churches are generally really, really good. So I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thank you very much, Anita. Is anybody else? Sherry?
I think Jerry was ahead of me.
Good, Sherry?
I was just going to move it.
I'll second it. And I believe we'll be getting increased taxes too with the new assessment, which is always good.
Okay, so we have a mover and Jerry, seconder by Sherry. Any other, Donna, did you want to add something? No, okay. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everybody. And we'll move on to our last item on our public meeting, and that's bylaw amendment at 2766 and 2771 River Road. And I'll turn it back over to Jeanette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you indicated, these properties up to the application are 2766 and 2771 River Road. The subject lands are currently designated Hamlet Environmental Constraint because there's a floodplain present, as well as Lakeshore Residential Exception Zone 470, Residential Type 1 Environmental Protection, which again is because of the presence of the floodplain. This amendment is a condition of a consent to sever application, which was imposed by the township. So essentially what is happening, and you can note I think, if you want to be report, there's a larger waterfront parcel with a very small sliver of property that is being severed off, and it's going to be merged with the property across the road that's identified as lot 13. That small portion will provide the property owners with waterfront access. It will be zoned environmental protection 471, which indicates that no structures can be constructed upon these lands. So this property is simply to provide them with waterfront access, so there will be no structures built on it. It is entirely flood susceptible, so that wouldn't be permitted. So I have completed a review of the application, and I have indicated that is my professional planning opinion that the proposal is consistent with the policy statement and the growth plan, and does maintain the spirit and intent of the county and township's official plan and zoning bylaw. I'd like to note that the whole property is being rezoned. Sorry, the severed parcel that's going to be merged is going to be rezoned from environmental protection. But the other parcel has to be rezoned also because we still have a parcel that's too small, doesn't meet with the parameters of today's bylaw. The property owners have expressed some concerns with that because they do have some legal non-conforming uses that are occurring on the property. So I have added one clause to the draft zoning bylaw that would say section 3.28 of this bylaw shall apply to the LR exception 481 zone. This section is a section of the township's bylaw that would allow for legal non-conforming uses to continue until that use no longer occurs. So if these uses are established as legal non-conforming, they can continue to move forward with that use. My understanding is it's 2 dwellings and one is a duplex. Used to be a former hotel way back in the 1800s, and the property owner doesn't want to lose that status, and so I have recommended that we add that section to that little clause to the bylaw. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I do believe that the property owner and her partner are online, and they may have some questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, Jeanette. I think as well is the agent, Emily. Are you on the line? Did you want to add something to that?
No, don't really have much to add. Jeanette summarized it pretty well. It's just a condition of consent application that is pursuant to an agreement of purchase and sale with the property owner. So I'm happy to answer any questions that she may have or that council may have.
Okay, and Aaron and David, did you want to add anything?
Nothing to add at this time, no.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question from Ross and Bev Bartlett. Did you want to go ahead? You might be muted.
Ask them to unmute if you just want to give it. There we go.
Yeah, nothing.
No, we're good. The only question we had was the shoreline was highlighted on the sketch we got. Wondered why it was highlighted all the way down past the church.
The cemetery.
Down the whole end.
Jeanette, did you catch that? It was a little, I couldn't quite hear it. So
I think what he is wondering why the property was highlighted all the way down to down to the cemetery, I think is what she said. The whole property would have been highlighted in the notice, so that's what they would have seen. But it's only that small sliver that is actually subject to the application, and that small sliver that's being merged to.
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
okay, that answered the question?
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, and I see another name on here is Rob Hissler. Is Rob on the line? I don't see the name coming up. Tanya, is he on the line?
No, I don't believe he's joined us, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so.
No, Rob is our lawyer and he's not on the line right now.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Thanks.
I'm sorry,
okay.
I'm just able to join now.
Okay, did you have any comments?
I'm afraid I missed part of it just because of my connection. But I hear that Dave was on, so I trust that Dave has addressed everything.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'll now go to council. Is Sherry?
It's pretty straightforward, and I am willing to move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Sherry. And Donna, do you want to second it? Yeah, Donna is seconding it. Any further comments? Not seeing any. I'll ask for the vote. All those in favor? That is. Okay, colleagues, that completes the public meeting. Before we go on to the rest of the agenda, it is now 6:35. We'll reconvene at 6:40. So we're going to take a 5-minute recess. So thank you, folks.
If I could just remind all council members to turn off their cameras and their microphones during the recess. Thank you.
think we might have lost Donna. Jerry, are you online? Looks like we just lost Jerry.
We'll check and see if we can see what's going on with Donna.
And I think Jerry just went off the line too.
Oh yeah, we lost him too. Okay, hang on one sec. Sorry, we're just waiting to hear back from Donna and Jerry. Jerry's just restarting. He said it'll just be a minute and to go ahead if you wanted to.
Have we heard from Donna at all?
No, not yet. I'll maybe try to give her a quick call here.
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, looks like we've got Jerry back, and I think we've got Donna back. There we go. Okay, colleagues, we will proceed with the agenda. I'll call the meeting back to order, and we're going to go to municipal officers and staff reports, and we have one report. Lane, do you want to present that?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I think I'll let Angela speak to that one, actually.
Angie?
Thank you. So this was a joint report that Lane and I pulled together. So we just wanted to provide an update on a couple of grant applications. The first one is the Municipal Modernization Grant. So this is phase 2. This is a continuation of the province's previous modernization grants. You'll be familiar that we actually received 2 allocations back in 2020 of a little over $800,000. So they've announced another phase for this modernization effort. So we are proposing that we would put forward an application for the Intake 2 program under the implementation stream. And you'll see that the project would fund a project between $500,000 to $250,000, with a split of the province providing 65% funding and the municipality contributing the remaining 35%. We are proposing that we would undertake the digitization of all of our property roll files, building and planning files, and road files. We estimate that there's at least 10,000 plus individual paper files that we have. And if we can digitize all of those records, it will definitely improve our efficiency in terms of retrieving those documents. And this would actually tie nicely into our tech project where we're implementing our cloud permitting program as well as Laserfiche. So essentially we would be able to integrate a number of our records and retrieve them from one source. So we would propose that we would put an application in for that project. We have to have the project or the grant application, it's an expression of interest, submitted by March the 15th. And they do recommend that a resolution from council does aid in the kind of the review of the application. So it's not a requirement, but it does certainly help. So that is one grant application that we wanted to let you know about and seek some support for. The other application is for the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative. We actually submitted this grant today because the deadline was for today, March the 12th. We identified the Fairburn Street Trail project. That is a project that council has previously endorsed in the past. We put the application in for phase 2. Which would be to work on the trail section between Pine Hill Road and the 5th line. We're hopeful that we would actually hear back about this particular grant by the end of April. So there's a fairly quick turnaround for response on that. Happy to take any questions that you might have.
So Angie, what's the dollar amount for each application?
The actual project value?
The actual amount of money we're asking the government for.
Yeah, so for the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative, that was the application we submitted today. We asked for the full amount, which was $250,000. The estimated cost of that section of the project was $290,000.
Okay, and on the modernization, you said between 5 and 200,000. That's quite the spread.
250, that's correct. We actually don't have a number for the project yet. We're still working on the details for the grant application.
Okay.
Yeah.
Colleagues, questions? Anita?
Not a question, just a comment with regards to the first grant. I think it's a marvelous project. If we can get the money for it, it would certainly free up a lot of space within the office itself. A question I do have, so let's say we were successful, those paper files, would they be moved off site to a secure facility, or do we have buildings within the township that could be suitable for storage of the paper copies?
To you, through you, Mr. Mayor, we actually would likely be able to shred most of those files.
I'd like to move the motion or the recommendation.
Okay. And do we have a seconder for that? Jerry, any further questions on that? Not hearing any. All those in favor? Okay, Gary, both of those have council's endorsements. Thank you. We will now go on to our consent items. What items would people like to pull? So Donna?
Correspondence number 11.
Correspondence number 11, okay. And anybody else? Jerry?
6-1 for me.
6-1, Jerry. And I'm going to pull items 4 and item 9. So we have 4, 9, 11, and 6-1. And Anita?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Were we not going to do something with regards a little bit more in depth with regards to the rescue of the Old Stone Mill House, or is that?
That's 6-1. That's 6-1. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So we'll start off with I guess item 6-1. Gary?
Thank you, sir. Through you. So we've got the recommendation here from the Old Stone Group. I have kind of drafted a motion here in regards to that over the interim control bylaw, and I'd like to read out this motion and then hopefully get a seconder on it for some action here tonight. And that's that the correspondence from Donnelly Law sent on behalf of the Friends of the Old Stone Mill House, requesting that council consider passing an interim control bylaw be received for information, and that Mr. Donnelly be advised that the township cannot consider the request to the use of an interim control bylaw, as it would contravene section 38(7) of the Planning Act, which prohibits a municipality from enacting an ICBL, interim control bylaw, over the same lands for a period of 3 years from the expiration of a previous one. In this case, the cannabis interim control bylaw, which applied to all the lands in the township, expired on March 12, 2020. And I guess I kind of jumped the gun on that. I should have reached out to staff first just to get a little bit more clarification on that, rather than just go into the bylaw. But at the end of it, looking for a seconder for that, and then to receive the report as well as send it to Donnelly Law. And once we get a seconder, maybe we could have staff comment on the interim control bylaw rule.
Donna, did you want to second it?
Yes, I would.
Okay. And Rob, did you want to just clarify the issue about the interim control bylaw?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I know that John has also looked into this issue, but so essentially it's very similar to the debate we had surrounding 290 Cork line. Interim control bylaws are meant to be used sparingly, and so the Planning Act restricts just how often the municipality can use it. So it specifically says that essentially, if you pass an interim control bylaw that applies to a particular piece of property, and as Councillor Heron noted, we passed an interim control bylaw that applied to all properties in the municipality in 2019, that expired in 2020, in March of 2020. So that Planning Act provision says that essentially, because we've done that, we can't do another one for 3 years. So that takes us to March of 2023.
Thank you, Rob. Any other comments from anybody? Nope. Okay. We have a mover and a seconder of Jerry's motion. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, the next item was correspondence item number 4. And that's the AMO update referring to additional relief funding for a number of municipalities. And this is directed to Lane, whether we've had a chance to think about where we might want to be using that money, or if we it's been too soon to really have worked through some kind of specific plan. Lane?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I can confirm that we have sent correspondence back to the ministry and confirm that we would accept the grant. So that was a requirement, and we have done that. Council will recall that we do have some funds under the Restart program that are unallocated for 2021 as well. And I think that with those unallocated funds and these new funds, they would be available to offset any lost revenues that we would have due to COVID. So I would propose at this point that we would hold those in abeyance and then offset any lost revenues that we would experience, mostly at our recreation departments, but library for one, and possibly here in the general government area.
Okay, thank you very much, Lane. The next item was mine as well, and this is to Angie. The item 9, the one that came from the Township of Archipelago about problems with voters lists. It's just a general question. Are we experiencing anything like that, or is it working relatively well in our township?
Yeah, I believe that this question came up earlier at another council meeting, and maybe it's just that I've been doing elections too long. But I don't find this to be a major problem. Usually it's something very specific, and we need to sort of work our way through it, and we check the legislation. Sometimes we need to consult with the township solicitor just to make sure our interpretation is okay. So again, maybe it's just me, but I don't see a huge issue.
Okay, thank you. And then we had item number 11, which I think, Anita, you wanted to speak to? Sorry, Donna wanted to speak to. I'm sorry.
That's just referring to the motion from the municipality of Tweed. I just wanted to make sure it was in my motion earlier that we support that resolution from their municipality regarding licenses for medical cannabis production should be subject to consultation with municipalities and have regard for specific land use zoning bylaws. So I just wanted to make sure that was that we were going to respond to that.
Okay, so colleagues, that is all of the consent items. Can I get a motion to receive all the consent? Anita, Jerry, all those in favor? That is carried. We have no petitions, so we'll go to council portfolio updates, and we will start with Donna.
Yes, mine isn't very informative. We haven't had a new library board meeting since the last council meeting. We haven't had another police services board meeting. The link, as I understand it, is supposed to start early May, around the 6th. And we had a recreation committee meeting scheduled for tomorrow night, but that is being canceled due to lack of any information or lack of activity. And the ice is actually going out as we speak in the arenas. Jerry may have more information on that. That's it.
Okay, economic development, Sherry?
Thank you, through you. I was in to see the owner of Harley G's. It's a clothing store for the whole family. And they have locations in Oshawa and Port Perry, and they've now located on Chemong Road. So stop in there and see them. They've got leathers in there as well. So it's an interesting store. Nice owner there. Seymour and Seymour Accounting Services is in the same location, and it's open just in time for tax time. And Panama Auction House is an estate sale marketplace. It's also on Chemong Road. And please, when you can, support our local business with us going back into the red zone, the restaurants, and actually all of our business owners are struggling again. So let's do what we can to support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Public Works and Recreation, Barry?
If I could add to Sherry's point there about supporting the restaurants, don't use gift cards right now. They need the money now. They need the gift card money. That, you know, they've already eaten those groceries. They want the gift cards down the road. Let them get back on their feet, then hit them with the gift cards. What are those guys? They're really good. Roads guys. They're out there steaming the culverts and just getting ready for the spring thaw and the normal stuff that happens. Pardon me. Got a list here. So the arenas have now closed with the there's no playing or scrimmaging at either end of the ice. So we're going to pull the ice out. Over the past weekend, all the minor associations got together, and effective yesterday, it was done. The Chiefs have also ended their season. The Lakefield Trail is going to be celebrating their 20th anniversary, so stay tuned for some fundraising and initiatives and trail improvement plans. And the Lakefield Campground, I don't know if anybody's heard anything about that place lately. The consultant work has commenced. Commenced and required for the utilization report. So we anticipate the consultant will be reaching out to the community members to gather input over the next month or so. Enjoy the lovely weather scheduled for this week. Fresh air always lifts the spirit. Oh, thanks, Tanya. That's it for me.
Thank you, Jerry. Anita, Sustainability, Culture, and Senior Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have not had an accessibility advisory committee meeting the last couple of months because there's just been nothing, no site plans or anything to look at. With regards to Municipal Heritage Committee, we are having our next meeting on March 25th. And we've been working on a list of proposed properties to be put on the Heritage Register. So we're hoping to finalize that at committee March 25th. And then at some point after staff have done all the stuff that they have to do on their end, it will be coming to council at a future meeting for acceptance or discussion at the council level. And Andy, I hope you can answer this question. This is with regards to the active cases versus the presumed variance being on the health board. You could probably answer when it comes time, which is next. But I see that, so currently the active cases are 86. The presumed variants are 87. So I'm just curious to know, in terms of number crunching, of the active cases, how many of them are linked to the Severn Court and Trent University facilities, and how many are not related to the two above noted? Because it would, for my own understanding, I would like to be able to say how many, are like not linked to Severn Court or to Trent University. But anyway, that's my report. Thank you very much.
But I will get it for you. I'll have to check with the officials of public health. The impact on the county of changes that the city is contemplating in terms of affordable housing and social housing. And so Peterborough Housing Corporation will be presenting at the next county council meeting to speak to that. We also had a really interesting report on our paramedicine, where our paramedics are doing a series of interventions proactively to keep people out of emergency rooms and in their homes. It's Randy Mello, our chief, went through, I think, 3 separate initiatives that we're doing, and it all makes a great amount of sense because it helps keep people out of the emergency room and in their homes. So that was very interesting. I wanted to mention from the ORCA perspective, ORCA has a new a reporting system now, where it will report on its applications for permits in terms of the time frame between when the application is made and when it is disposed of. And so that's going to be up online on ORCA. We got the first report, Sherry and I did at our last meeting for the previous year, and they'll be producing that on a regular basis. In terms of the province, we just already talked about the fact that they have made a new investment and as Lane said, we'll be taking a look at that. In terms of public health, I'll look into the specific question that Anita asked. The numbers are concerning. At that number, that's as high, I think, or pretty close to as high as what we've been in the pandemic. It's been really challenging in the last couple of weeks in terms of the number of cases. I think the other, and I don't have it right in front of me, but the other statistic to take a look at is close contacts, because those are people that are having to use resources to track on a regular basis because they've to see whether or not they develop symptoms or develop COVID, and so that it can be a labor intensive. So the higher you see that number, the bigger the demand are on staff. And of course, right now, what staff want to be concentrating on is the rollout of the vaccine. And so that's but vaccine is now in our community. Public health and the hospital are both vaccinating, and a significant number of the phase 1 individuals are being vaccinated this week. And Anita, you probably are well aware of this, are into the retirement homes and going through that. And starting on March the 15th, they will start with the independent living. Those are the people that are living at home, age 80 and above. So if I did my calculations, people born in 1941 or before will become eligible, and there will be an online and phone system. You use one or the other. That is supposed to be livened up on March 15th to make your appointment. There'll be much more news about this. The Medical Officer of Health is holding a press conference on Thursday, and we'll hopefully have some additional information. And as we are all aware, Peterborough public health area entered into a red zone on 12:01 a.m. on Monday, and so that has a number of additional restrictions, and so hopefully that won't last too long, but that depends on the number of cases that we experience and the direction that goes in. So that, colleagues, is my report. And so that is our portfolios. We'll go to other new and unfinished business. There is a request for an endorsement from the EDBC. I don't know, Sherry, do you want to speak to that? Yep.
Thank you, through you. So the County Council unanimously passed a resolution with regards to what happened at Fleming College and what kind of an effect it has had. And that was as a result of one of our members of the Economic Development and Business Committee making that request. And it just happened to be good timing that we were having a county council meeting, so I brought it forward, and as I said, it was passed unanimously. The Economic Development Committee felt very strongly that they wanted to have a emergency meeting to pass this resolution on to council as an advisory committee. That's all they can do, is to make a recommendation to us that we pass a resolution as well. The wording is there the way they had recommended. And I just wanted to comment that, you know, a small number of students made a really poor and irresponsible choice, and now we're in the red zone. It's affecting the lives and livelihoods of a great number of people. It's good to know the Student Council supports sanctions for those responsible. And I hope both Fleming and Trent utilize whatever is available to them to educate these students on their actions so it doesn't happen again. Contact tracing is really important. And when the sanctions were put in place, some of the students stopped sharing who they had contact with, And unfortunately, it's really not unfortunately, but contact tracing is really important. So we have to ensure that it isn't inhibited. I also have heard rumors from parents of students that were in the nursing and PSW taking those courses, that both PRHC and Ross Memorial are now saying they don't want any placements from either of those groups, those students. So it's going to make it difficult for those students to get a degree. Unfortunately, it wasn't all the PSWs and all the nurses that were at those parties, but they're being affected along with all the rest of us with being in the red zone. So I would like to put forward the motion of saying that we support appropriate corrective actions being laid on residents, owners, and students what am I saying? As Peterborough Public Health has listed as attending the parties that took place.
Barry?
Yeah, I'll second that for Sherry, and well said, Sherry. You know, the consequences of this is horrendous. Take a look, Riley's and Bob Cajun now just closed today. You know, I don't think they understand just how great that reach is when it happens. And, you know, if they're punishing all the PSW workers because of the PSW workers for the actions of few, you know, the whole community, the whole country's been punished because of the few. So, you know, sometimes that's where how the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. You know, some of these guys may have to sit back another semester to get their degrees. Well, you know, I'd rather sit back a semester and be delayed than lose my house and my and everything I've worked for my entire life. That these little ignorant, Jesus, Annie, that's enough.
Anita?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fully understand. I, as well, working in a retirement home, we do have placement students. And I know it was, you know, I don't think any of our students attended that party, but there's always that fear that if they didn't attend the party, maybe they attend hanging out with friends who did. So I personally had a real concern, you know, especially with the frail elderly and the vulnerable. We had to go through a course, 3 swabs over the course of 8 days because we did have an outbreak. The outbreak has been lifted, not specific to the PSW students that we had, but there's still that concern, you know, and swabbing of the residents, especially those who maybe have dementia or whatever. Us as staff are not really thrilled about getting the swabs, but it's even more hard for us to see the residents have to get the swabs. And I mean, I'm grateful that we're on the other end of it. And but there was the concern about the PSW placement students that we had, you know, that I felt really nervous actually for our residents. Fortunately, everything was fine, but still, it's affected not only retirement homes, long-term care facilities, but like Jerry points out and Sherry, now our region is back into the red zone, and it didn't have to happen. It didn't have to be that way.
Thank you. Donna?
I just wanted to add my agreement with my colleagues. It's a really, really unfortunate situation, and the ramifications of their actions is so far reaching that I'm glad we're making this motion.
Thank you. And colleagues, I've spoken to this before, and it is unfortunate that some poor decisions were made, and it's really had some really significant consequences. Anyways, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, is there any other new or unfinished business that anybody wants to bring up? Okay, then we will, do we want to do our bylaws before we go into closed session, Madam Clerk, or?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay, so we have several bylaws here. We have the adopting Summer Lane into the township road system. We have the zoning bylaw amendment for 1575 Chemung Road. The zoning bylaw amendment for the water 724 Center Line, and the zoning bylaw amendment for 2771 River Road. And then we are looking to authorize the development agreement at 1896 Chemung Road. Do I have somebody to move those? Anita, seconded by Donna. All those in favor? Those are carried. I now would need a motion to go into closed session, and then by Jerry and by Anita. All those in favor? Okay, so colleagues, we are going to leave the Zoom meeting, and you have a telephone a number to call into. It is 7:18, so if we could be back by 7:22, so 4 minutes or so, just to get on the phone, and so we'll see you on the other side. Thank you. Good night.